He walked into my kitchen on a Tuesday morning, opened my refrigerator, and said, "We need to talk about how you're using this space." Not good morning. Not how are you feeling. Just that, standing there in his undershirt, holding my orange juice like it belonged to him, looking at the shelves I had stocked for 41 years like they were inconveniently arranged. I was 63 years old. I had lived in that house since before his wife was born. I turned back to the stove and said nothing. That was my first mistake. Not the last. Let me back up, because you need to understand what kind of woman I was before all of this. I am not someone who lets things slide. I raised two children mostly on my own after my husband passed in 2009. I worked as an office manager for a cardiology practice for 22 years. I balanced budgets. I managed doctors with egos the size of this state. I am not soft, but I am a mother. And sometimes being a mother means you override the part of yourself that knows better. My daughter. I will call her my daughter, because that is what she is to me. All of her, even the parts that broke my heart. She had always been the one I worried about more. Not because she was less capable. She was brilliant, actually. Graduated top of her nursing program. Had a steadiness to her that I admired. But she had a habit of choosing men who needed a great deal of managing, and she had a habit of managing them quietly, invisibly, in ways that cost her things she never got back. She met him at a work conference in Nashville. He was in pharmaceutical sales. Charming in the way that certain men are charming. Effortlessly and with almost no substance behind it. He had opinions about everything and expertise in nothing. He laughed too loudly at his own jokes. He called me ma'am the first 3 times we met and then stopped, as though he had decided formality was no longer necessary. They got married in October 2019, 8 months after they met. Small ceremony. I wore blue. I smiled in every photograph. I told myself I was being too hard on him. I told myself I didn't know him yet. What I know now is that I knew him exactly right from the beginning. The arrangement started in the spring of 2021. The pandemic had been hard on a lot of people, and pharmaceutical sales had dried up in ways nobody expected. My daughter was still working, hospitals never close, but between his income disappearing and rent on their apartment in Phoenix, they were running thin. She called me on a Sunday afternoon, and I could hear it in her voice before she finished the first sentence. That careful, apologetic tone she used when she needed something and hated herself for needing it. "Just until he finds something stable," she said. 6 months, maybe 8. My house is a 3-bedroom ranch in Tucson. I bought it in 1983 with my first husband. The backyard has a lemon tree. I planted the year my daughter started kindergarten. I know every creak in the hallway floor. I know which window sticks in the summer and which burner runs hot. This house is not just property to me. It is the physical record of my entire adult life. I said yes. I want to be honest about something because I have had years now to sit with it. I did not set terms. I did not say 6 months and mean 6 months. I did not ask for rent or for a clear move-out date. I told myself it was because I loved my daughter and wanted to help, and that was true. But it was also true that I did not want the conflict. I did not want to be the mother who made things harder. I handed them a grace I had not thought through, and I handed it to both of them, including the one who had not earned it. That is the honest version. By month 3, he had set up a workstation in my living room, a full desk, 2 monitors, a standing lamp with an orange bulb that made the whole room look like a submarine. He worked odd hours, or what he called working. I could rarely tell the difference between a sales call and a podcast. His voice filled the house from 8 in the morning until sometimes past 10 at night. I started eating dinner in the kitchen instead of the dining room. I started watching my programs on the small TV in my bedroom. I started walking softly in my own hallway so as not to disturb whatever he was doing. I noticed all of this happening. I noticed it and I told myself it was temporary. I told myself I was being gracious. My daughter worked long shifts. She came home tired and ate and slept and got up and went back. We did not have the kind of time together I had imagined when I said yes. He was always there, filling the space between us with noise. 6 months passed, then 8, then a year. I watched the lemon tree drop its fruit and bloom again. I watched a whole season of my life fold quietly into itself. Every time I thought about having the conversation, I thought about her face, her tired, grateful face, and I let it go. He found a new position in late 2022, some regional manager role with a medical device company. I thought this meant the timeline would finally move. It did not. The new job paid better, but there was always a reason. The housing market. Saving for a down payment. Just a few more months. I know now that a person will stay as long as you allow them to stay. That is not cruelty. That is just the nature of open-ended arrangements. When there is no line, people do not draw one for themselves. He started having opinions about my house in ways I had not encountered before. Small things at first. He would rearrange the pantry and not mention it. He repositioned the patio furniture without asking. He bought a new shower curtain for the main bathroom, the bathroom I used, and threw away the old one, which had been there since my older grandchild was a baby and which I had chosen specifically because it had a pattern I loved. The old one was wearing out, he said when I asked. It was not wearing out, but I let it go. Then one evening in March of last year, I came home from my book club. I go on the first Thursday of every month. Same group for 11 years, and I found him in my armchair. Not the couch. My armchair. The one beside the window where I have sat every evening since we moved into this house. The one where I read and where I watch the news and where I sat the night my husband died, holding the phone and waiting for morning. He was in that chair watching a game, volume high, shoes off, entirely at home. I sat on the couch. I did not say anything. I sat on the couch in my own house while he occupied my chair, and I told myself it did not matter. I told myself I was being flexible. I told myself I was keeping the peace. The morning everything changed was a Saturday in late October. I want to be specific because I want you to understand it was not a building fight, not a long argument that finally broke. It came from nowhere, or from the particular nowhere that forms when a person has been quietly expanding their sense of ownership for 2.5 years. I was at the kitchen table with my coffee and the newspaper. I still get the physical paper. I like the feel of it. And he came in, poured himself a cup without acknowledging me, and stood at the counter looking at his phone. My daughter was on shift. The house was quiet except for the birds outside and the sound of him scrolling. Then he said, without looking up, "We've been thinking. It would make more sense for you to take the back bedroom." I put down my coffee. The back bedroom is the smaller room. It is where I store my sewing things and the boxes from my husband's office that I have not been able to go through yet. It has one window that faces the fence. My bedroom faces the backyard. It has a ceiling fan my husband installed the summer before he got sick. It has my mother's vanity mirror against the wall. It has 30 years of my life in its bones. The master makes more sense for us, he said. Better closet space, better light. You don't really need all that room. He said it like it was logistics, like we were restructuring an office. I looked at him for a long moment. He was still looking at his phone. "I need you to say that again," I said. "I want to make sure I heard you correctly." He looked up then, and I saw it, that small flicker of something, not embarrassment, not reconsideration, impatience. "You'd be more comfortable in the back," he said. "It's quieter." I stood up. I picked up my coffee. I walked to my bedroom and I closed the door. I sat on the edge of my bed, the one I have slept in for 30 years, and I looked at my mother's mirror and I thought about all the times I had let things go. The pantry, the shower curtain, the armchair, the desk in the living room, the late nights and the loud voice and the 2.5 years of my house not feeling like my house. I thought, how did I get here? And then I thought, how do I get back? I did not cry. I want to say that because I think sometimes people assume that moments like this are moments of collapse. This was not collapse. This was clarity. There is a difference, and I have learned to tell them apart. I picked up my phone and I called my friend Nora, who is 71 years old and has seen everything and is afraid of nothing. You need a real estate attorney, she said before I had finished explaining. Not tomorrow, today. I did not know what she meant exactly, but I trusted her, so I listened. That afternoon, I drove to Nora's house and she sat with me at her dining room table while I made calls. She had done something similar years ago. Different circumstances, same essential problem, a person in her home who had stopped behaving like a guest. She knew the language. She knew who to call. The attorney I reached was a woman who had a calm, even voice and who asked me a series of questions I had not expected. Was the arrangement written down anywhere? No. Had any money ever changed hands? No. How long had they been living there? 2.5 years. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said something that shifted the entire shape of the situation for me. In Arizona, she said, anyone who has been residing in a property for a certain period of time with the owner's knowledge and permission may be considered a tenant under state law, even without a lease, even without a paying rent. That means you cannot simply ask them to leave. You need to follow the formal process. I did not know that. In 22 years of managing an office, in 41 years of owning a home, I had never needed to know that. But knowing it now meant I understood what I was dealing with. This was not a family conversation. This was a legal situation. What does the process look like? I asked. She told me. Written notice, formal timeline, everything documented. How long? I asked. If they don't comply, it can go to the courts, but many people leave when they receive formal notice. The paperwork itself is often enough. I asked her to begin the process. I did not tell my daughter that day. I want to be honest about that too. I thought about it for a long time, sitting in Nora's driveway before I drove home, sitting in my car in my own garage. I thought, she is my daughter. She deserves to know what is coming. She did not make this choice alone. But I also thought about the 2.5 years. I thought about her standing in the kitchen when he rearranged my pantry and saying nothing. I thought about her sitting in my living room while he occupied my chair and saying nothing. I thought about all the moments I had expected her to be my daughter first, and she had been his wife first, every single time. She would warn him. I knew that the way I know the creak in my hallway floor, and if she warned him, he would become a different problem. So I drove home, and I made dinner, and I watched the evening news from my armchair. I reclaimed it that night, quietly, without announcement, and I said nothing. The notice was delivered on a Wednesday morning. I had made arrangements to be at Nora's when it arrived. I did not want to be in the house, not because I was afraid, but because I did not want to manage anyone's reaction. I had spent 2.5 years managing. I was done managing. I was on Nora's porch drinking tea when my phone began to ring. My daughter, twice. Then a text. Mom, what is this? Please call me. Then him calling from his own phone. I watched his name appear, and I let it go to voicemail. Then my daughter again. I answered. Mum. Her voice was different from what I expected, not angry, frightened. What is happening? You received a formal notice, I said. The attorney will be available to answer questions if you have them. Her number is on the document. Silence. Mum, you can't, she stopped. He's my husband. I know, I said, and this is my house. Those two things have been in conflict for a while now. I've made a decision about which one I'm going to honor. She started crying. That part was hard. I will not pretend it wasn't hard. My daughter crying is a sound that reaches into some part of me that exists outside of reason, outside of decisions, outside of everything I know to be right. I pressed my hand flat on the table and I breathed. I love you, I said. That is not changing, but I need you to take this seriously. They had 30 days. My daughter came to me alone 3 days later. She sat in my kitchen. He was not there. I think she knew better than to bring him, and we talked for almost 2 hours, real talking. the kind we had not done in a long time. She told me things I had suspected and things I had not known. That he had been resistant to looking for a place for over a year. That every time she brought it up, there was a new reason, a new delay. That she had been asking him to look at apartments for months, and he had told her they would have the conversation with me directly instead. That was the conversation he had initiated in my kitchen about the back bedroom. She did not say she was sorry, not in those words, but she said something that I have thought about every day since. I kept thinking you would say something, she said, and when you didn't, I thought maybe it was okay. I thought you didn't mind. I looked at my hands on the table. I minded, I said quietly. I just didn't want to hurt you. She put her hand over mine. Mom, that's the same thing I was doing. We sat with that for a while. They moved out on the 26th day. He arranged it without speaking to me directly, which was his choice, and, honestly, relief. Movers came on a Saturday morning. I stayed in the backyard with my coffee and my lemon tree while boxes moved through my front door. My daughter hugged me before she left, long and tight, the way she used to when she was small and coming home from somewhere she had not wanted to be. I'll call you, she said. I know, I said. They found an apartment in Scottsdale. My daughter called me 3 days after they moved in, then again the following week. Then we fell into something that felt like what we used to be. Before all of this, before I had let the space between us fill up with things I did not say. I will be honest, I do not know what her marriage looks like now. I do not know if she is happy or if she is managing in the quiet, invisible way she has always managed. She does not tell me everything, and I do not ask for everything. That is a boundary too, knowing which doors are mine to open and which ones are hers to hold. What I know is that she calls me, that she came for Thanksgiving and made the sweet potato casserole she knows I love, and sat at my table and laughed, the real laugh, not the careful one. That she is still my daughter, and I am still her mother, and neither of us has let the distance win. As for him, I have nothing much to say. He lives in the Scottsdale apartment. He has a new sales job. His name comes up less and less in my conversations with my daughter, and I take that to mean whatever it means. I moved the desk out of the living room that same Saturday they left, dragged it to the curb myself. I am 63, not incapable. Put it out with a free sign and it was gone by noon. I rearranged my furniture back to the way it had been. The armchair by the window, the side table with the lamp my husband gave me for our anniversary, the couch facing the television at the angle I like. I restocked the pantry the way I have always kept it. I went to the linen store and bought a new shower curtain with the pattern I wanted. It has small yellow flowers on a white ground. I chose it slowly, taking my time, the way you choose something for a room that belongs to you. That evening I made dinner, chicken and rice, nothing complicated, and I sat at my kitchen table with the radio on the station I like, and I ate in the quiet that was mine. Not empty quiet, not lonely quiet, the quiet of a house that knows who lives in it. I have thought a lot since then about what I would tell someone in the same situation, not about the legal steps, talk to an attorney, that part is simple, but about the earlier part, the part before it gets to that. I think about my daughter saying, I thought you didn't mind. I think about how I had taught everyone in that house to read my silence as permission, how I had believed that keeping the peace and keeping yourself were compatible, and how slowly, quietly, they had become the opposite of each other. I was the one who set the terms of that arrangement. The absence of terms was itself a choice, and I made it, and for 2.5 years I lived in the consequence of it. I do not say this to be hard on myself. I say it because it is true, and because the truth is the only useful thing I have to offer you. If someone is in your home, be clear, be kind, be generous, be loving, but be clear. A line you do not draw is not a line that protects you. And if you have already waited too long, if you are sitting in your kitchen right now reading the same silence you have been reading for months, wondering how things got here, then I want you to know that it is not too late. It is not too late to stand up in your own house. It is not too late to be the person whose name is on the deed. I sat in my armchair that first evening alone and watched the news with the volume where I like it. And outside the window, my lemon tree was just starting to bloom again, and I thought, this is mine. I had always known it. I just needed to say so. There is a moment I keep coming back to. Not the morning he stood in my kitchen telling me to move into the back bedroom. Not the day the attorney's letter was delivered. The moment I keep returning to is earlier than all of that. It is me, sitting on my own couch, watching him occupy my armchair, telling myself it did not matter. That is where it started. Not with him, with me. I have thought a long time about cause and effect. Not in any abstract sense, but in the plain, practical way that life teaches you, if you are willing to be taught. Every situation I found myself in during those 2.5 years had a root I could trace back to a choice I made or didn't make. I invited them in without terms. I absorbed small violations without naming them. I treated my own silence as generosity when it was really just avoidance. And the world, people, situations, arrangements responded to what I actually did, not what I intended. He did not become that person overnight. He became that person because nothing in that house ever pushed back. I had taught him, without a single word, that the boundaries of my home were negotiable. That is not his lesson to learn, that is mine. What I understand now is that doing right by the people you love does not mean making yourself smaller. I thought I was being a good mother by keeping the peace. I thought I was being selfless. But there is nothing selfless about disappearing inside your own home. There is nothing kind about teaching your daughter that love means tolerating whatever comes. The most honest thing I could have done, for her, for myself, for the whole arrangement, was to be clear from the beginning. Clarity is not cruelty. It is the opposite of it. That took a certain kind of thinking I had to work to get to. Calling Nora, listening instead of reacting, finding the attorney, understanding that the law existed to protect exactly this kind of situation, and that using it was not aggression, it was sense. I had to get quiet enough to think past the emotion and into the practical. What do I actually need here? What does the situation actually require? Not what feels easiest, not what avoids the immediate pain. What is actually true, and what does the truth require of me? And then I had to act on it. That part was not easy. My daughter cried, and I stayed on the line. The letter went out, and I did not call it back. I sat in Nora's driveway for a long time before I put the car in drive. Every one of those moments was a choice I had to make against the part of me that wanted to soften it, delay it, find one more reason to wait. I did not wait. What came back to me because of that? My house, my chair, my daughter's real laugh at Thanksgiving. None of it came from luck. It came from the sequence of things I chose to do, in the right order, when it would have been easier not to. I am 63 years old. I still have the armchair by the window. The lemon tree is blooming again. And I know now, in a way I did not before, that a life that belongs to you requires you to say so.